I've been thinking, right, over this last week, hearing all this discourse about what suspension, the Baker Mayfield trade thing. And I've been thinking, man, there is one player. And I think a bunch of players are being disrespected at this point. But there is one player that I feel like has been disrespected to the maximum. And it's not really that player's fault. Now, who's that player? You probably know because you read the title or the thumbnail. But just before we get into that, I want to make sure I shout out the Patreon Dog Check members. You could join, have your name on this list if you click the link in the description below on the Patreon and join the Dog Check tier. Also, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you subscribe button. Also, look, I know the sound was out for the first 2 minutes of my video. I don't know really what happened there on YouTube's end. It was fine when I uploaded it, and it was fine when I checked the video offline. But it did not have sound. What I was saying in those 2 minutes is that I started a new channel. It is Worst Take. It is where I will have all of my commentary videos on the national media and stuff like that, reacting to their takes. So if that's interesting to you, click the link down in the description below. But that being said, let's get into this talk about Jacoby Brissett. Now, Jacoby Brissett, I want to be clear here, right? Because whenever you bring up Jacoby Brissett, people act like you're trying to say that Jacoby Brissett is going to be this Hall of Fame quarterback and that you're not even going to lose a step with Jacoby Brissett. And that's not what anybody who is making an argument in the favor of Jacoby Brissett is making the argument. That's not even what Jacoby Brissett is probably making the argument for, right? But we get into this place, right, where there are three things going on with the quarterback position that make the Browns quarterback position conversation probably the most annoying one to talk about on the internet, at least, right? You have hardcore Baker fans who will feel slighted by the organization because they dared to move on from Baker Mayfield. Okay. You have hardcore Deshaun Watson stands who are going hard for Deshaun Watson at this particular moment. Okay. And then you have people who kind of just are down on the whole situation, which is understandable. I think it's a little short-sighted given that I don't think people are really taking in the full picture of the roster when they make these sweeping, sad statements about the Browns. But nonetheless, I understand where the emotion comes from, right? And you have all of this. And the intersection of all of this is Jacoby Brissett. And it all hinges on disrespecting Jacoby Brissett, right? In one way or another. In some ways, it's subtle, right? People are saying maybe Watson saves the season. That implies that Jacoby Brissett can't even handle a couple of games if he comes in there for 8 games. Or they're implying that if Watson is suspended for more than 10 games, his team is nothing without Deshaun Watson, i.e. kind of disrespecting Jacoby Brissett, saying that he can't even hold the ship down for 10 games. Why are you in the NFL, right? Then there's the just flat outright disrespect by the Baker Mayfield people who just call him a bum, trash, he's not good, he's all this stuff. And look, nobody's making the argument that Jacoby Brissett's a Pro Bowl quarterback, but also understand that Baker Mayfield is not a Pro Bowl quarterback. And when we're talking about what the difference can be from last year with the quarterback position, I think people default to, well, you got to compare Baker Mayfield's 2020 to whatever you're going to get out of Jacoby Brissett. That is false. That is false. Because what the Browns are trying to do is improve from last year. Because if you won 1.5 more games, 2 games, you won the division and you make the playoffs, and the Bengals end up being the wild card and playing the Chiefs in the first round. 2 games. A field goal and 4 interceptions in Green Bay, right? That's really what cost the Browns the playoffs in the division last year, is a field goal and 4 interceptions in Green Bay. Not to mention the other games that were punted away by bad quarterback play. And I bring up the bad quarterback play not to twist the knife in whatever wound that you have for Baker Mayfield, but I bring that up and saying Jacoby Brissett does not need to be better than 2020 Baker Mayfield in order for this team to make the playoffs. Jacoby Brissett needs to be better than 2021 Baker Mayfield, who was the 30th ranked quarterback according to PFF. According to QBR, he was the 27th ranked quarterback. So you see how the bar is not that high for what the quarterback has to do this year. Jacoby Brissett, in a short sample size, actually had a better PFF grade than Baker Mayfield last year, and a QBE and a better QBR, right? So there is a small sample, not be it a definitive sample, but a small sample that says, hey, you throw Baker Mayfield out there and something happens to him and he plays through it like last year, he's going to be worse than Jacoby Brissett. The issue last year was not, I think it got made up about, oh, Baker Mayfield's trying to play through this injury, be a tough guy, and whether that was selfish or not. I think the issue last year was that the Browns had no better quarterback than torn labrum Baker Mayfield on the roster, right? Like if Baker Mayfield with the torn labrum was playing at the 30th level or 30th to PFF and 27th to QBR, you had no option other than Baker Mayfield because Case Keenum was worse. Now, there are some things that we saw when they put Case Keenum in that made it easier to win, albeit that's going to be something I discuss in the second half of this video, right? That's another thing to consider when we're talking about this that I don't think a lot of people put into this conversation. But let's be real here. That's all Jacoby has to be better than, because this team won 8 games with awful quarterback play. Now, you could blame it on the labrum. You could blame it on anything else. But the one thing even Baker Mayfield apologists are not going to sit there and tell you, unless they are true grifters, is that Baker Mayfield had a good 2021. We all know he was trash in 2021. For whatever reason you want to blame it on, we know he was garbage in 2021. So we need somebody who can be better than that garbage in 2021. And Jacoby Brissett is a better bet to be better than that than Baker Mayfield, given that Baker Mayfield will either be much better than that or that, right? Like he fluctuates so often. It's been 4 years. He's at too bad, too good, right? So we don't know what to expect out of him. He's expensive at that. Now that doesn't really matter that much because we're paying for his $18 million, if that, but that's the situation with Baker. It's not this whole, hey, who has the most potential? Hey, who has the most talent? Hey, who has that? That does not matter if you are not consistent. And what the Browns need at the quarterback position is consistency, which brings me to my second point. Everybody gets caught up in this argument as if we are talking about Madden ratings. I think Madden and some analytics has sometimes ruined the discourse when we talk about football because it completely discards the largest element to football, which is that it is a team game, right? And what I mean by that is not, oh, he doesn't do it by himself. I mean that in a way of you have to interact with other people. How you interact with other people greatly affects your ability to be on the team and your ability to have your teammates play up to a certain level. It is a team sport. You have to work together with people on this, right? And when we get caught up in who has more potential here and who has that's and this and that, we get lost in all of that garbage and we forget that some guys just are better for the team when they play. Straight up, some guys are just helpful, right? When they're on the team, they're helpful. You think Andre Iguodala is on the Warriors right now because he's one of the best shooting guards in basketball or small forwards in basketball right now? He's old. He can't run. He's only on the team for intangible reasons. And they just won a championship, right? Trot Nixon, when he was on the Cleveland Indians, well, now the Guardians, but when Trot Nixon was here in Cleveland on the baseball team, what was his whole function? Locker room guy, right? And then the next year he wasn't there. The locker room fell apart. I'm referencing 2007 versus 2008 here, right? Like these things do matter. The human element of the game does matter. And this is where Jacoby Brissett, and this is why the Browns would prefer going to Jacoby Brissett over Baker Mayfield or over the other options, is because they kind of know what they can expect out of Jacoby Brissett. It's not going to be spectacular. He's not going to be a Pro Bowler. He's not going to be amazing, but they know that, and Jacoby Brissett knows that. So if they need a quarterback that can go out there, accept his role. And we talked about this a lot with Odell Beckham, but it's the same thing with Baker Mayfield, right? What you can rely on Jacoby Brissett to do is go out there, accept his role, and do what he's told. What you could not rely on Baker Mayfield to do was go out there, accept his role, and do what he was told, because he always wanted a bigger role, right? The reports came out during the season. He didn't like how the offense wasn't featuring him enough. He didn't like how he was being used in the offense. He felt like he should be used in this way, that way. And yeah, he's more talented than Jacoby Brissett, but that stuff right there, that didn't help winning. Right? That hurt winning. So even though he's more talented, he is doing stuff that is hurting the team because he's asking to be put in empty. He's asking to be put in these 5 wide situations. And then when he gets it and gets sacked a lot because he holds on to the ball too long, it's somebody else's fault. This is the stuff that, yeah, Baker's more talented. There's a lot of guys sitting the bench in the NFL right now that are more talented than the guy that starts over them. That's a fact. There are a lot of really talented backups. There are a lot of guys out the league that are more talented than some of the quarterbacks in the league. Straight up. There are some very talented dudes who cannot handle sitting the pine. Terrell Pryor was a great example of this. He was admitting of this, right? Where he was like, I can't be a backup quarterback because I just can't admit to being a backup. I just can't do it in my ego. He had to switch a wide receiver to stay in the league, right? So we get caught up in who has the higher potential, who has played better at a higher level and all that. And it's like, that's not what they want Jacoby Brissett to be. Deshaun Watson's the future quarterback of this team. Whether people like it or not, that just is what it is, right? Even if he gets suspended for 3 years, they will wait that out and then have Deshaun Watson for the rest of his career. As long as he can play quarterback in football, he's going to play for the Cleveland Browns as long as the Cleveland Browns have a say in it, right? Unless he wants to leave in free agency or something like that. But that's going to be the situation. They're not looking at Jacoby Brissett to be a long-term solution. They're looking for 1 season at most. More than likely, right? Maybe 2 seasons, but 1 season for right now. If it becomes more than that, they'll just sign somebody for the meantime. But that's what they're looking for. And if you got to go into 1 season or maybe just 8 games or maybe 4 or maybe 12, whatever the suspension ends up being, you would rather bet on somebody like Jacoby Brissett where you know what you can give him. I can give you 20 passing attempts. You're not going to complain. You're not going to cause dysfunction in the locker room because you're upset with your role. And you're just going to take what you need to do, take your role, and accept it. That sometimes is more important than who has the higher potential. Knowing your role and playing in your role is more important than how much potential that you have, unless you're Aaron Rodgers. And Baker Mayfield is not Aaron Rodgers. So it really don't matter what his potential is at that point. Can Baker Mayfield be a slightly better quarterback than Jacoby Brissett? Yeah. Can you trust Baker Mayfield to know his role and play in it? Absolutely not. He has proven he has not been capable of that, right? That's something we hoped that he was willing to do in 2020 and why the expectations for him were high coming into 2021. But how he handled 2021 just proved otherwise for the last time that people were willing to sit through that. So that is why Jacoby Brissett is a better option than Baker Mayfield for the Cleveland Browns. Baker Mayfield might be a better option for the Carolina Panthers. Baker Mayfield might be a better option for the Seattle Seahawks. But when it comes to the Cleveland Browns, when it comes to this system, Jacoby Brissett is just the better option. It's the more preferable option at this point, right? You have all of this stuff looming over with Baker Mayfield, all this bad feeling between Baker Mayfield and the front office. It's not going to work. He's admitted that. The Browns have admitted that. Right? It's just not going to work from a people standpoint. And then when it comes to Jacoby Brissett, why do people feel like the Browns could be a better team with Jacoby Brissett? Well, when the Browns had the less talented quarterback in, and let's be honest about this, Nick Mullins and Case Keenum, much less talented than Baker Mayfield, right? They went 2-1, almost went 3-0 if the kicker doesn't miss a kick, right? That's the truth about the Cleveland Browns, is that if they just had somebody in there at quarterback that could just accept their role and just be a game manager and accept that they're a game manager, they probably would have won more games. So Baker wanted to be Brett Favre. And he threw the Browns out of a lot more games than he won them last year. Honestly, I can't really point to that many games that he won them last year. Like, you can maybe point to Cincinnati, but he was not the driving force of the offense in that game. It was really a running effort by Nick Chubb that really put the Browns over the top in a lights-out defensive performance. Baker added in that, and he didn't mess it up, and he played well. But again, you need somebody in there if they're not going to be Deshaun Watson, if they're not going to be a top 7 quarterback that is willing to be a game manager. Baker was not willing to be a game manager. He wanted to be a game changer, and he definitely changed the game in some points, not for the positive. This is why Jimmy Garoppolo, even though, again, I point out every time I can that Jimmy Garoppolo on paper is a much worse quarterback than Baker Mayfield. But why is Jimmy Garoppolo able to have success? Because he accepts that he's garbage. right? Like, and I'm use garbage as a pejorative term. Like, he accepts that he's mediocre. He accepts that he is a game manager. There is no thought in Jimmy Garoppolo's mind that I need more passing attempts than what Kyle Shanahan is willing to give me. And when he accepts his role and rolls in that, they're able to win with that, even though he's not a spectacular quarterback. Jalen Hurts, a prime example of somebody who throughout his career has been willing to accept this role and do what's asked of him. And he does it, and he has had success every time he's done it, right? That is a prime example of somebody who's willing to do that, much less talented than Baker Mayfield, but they have a similar level of success, if not more success, just because they're willing to accept the role and play in it and embrace it. And that's what you can hope out of Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett, if he's going to do one thing, he's going to accept the role, do what he's got to do, and be an absolute professional about that situation. You can't expect the same thing out of Baker Mayfield. Now, I know there's going to be Baker fans in here that are going to be furious at me for saying that, but the reality is that that's what the league feels about him too, because nobody has been jumping overjoyed to trade for him. But you could disagree with me. That's just what I think, and that's why I think the Browns are probably going to be fine with Jacoby Brissett in there for however long Jacoby Brissett needs to be in there. That's their plan at quarterback. I think it's about time that we just accept that that's going to be the plan for however long Watson's going to be out, and that these Baker Mayfield things, it's just not happening. But that's just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think the Browns can win more games than they did last year with Jacoby Brissett, despite Jacoby Brissett being a less talented quarterback than what the starting quarterback was last year in Baker Mayfield? I think they can win a lot more games than last year by having more consistency at the position. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Also, please don't forget to check out Worst Take, the second channel. Links in the description. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.